Hello and welcome to the Empowered Couples Podcast, where here you get modern, non-boring relationship advice for you and your partner to communicate like pros, fight smarter, and stay on the same team no matter the challenge that you face. I am one of your hosts, Aaron Freeman.
And I'm Jocelyn Freeman, but you all just know us as the Freemans.
And this episode is about deeper reasons marriages lose fulfillment or fail, and then ways to prevent them from happening.
Yeah, that title could feel heavy, it could feel significant, and you may be falling in a couple places. You may feel as though in your relationship, in your marriage right now, there is less fulfillment. Or perhaps for you, you are actually feeling close to borderline, we may end this thing. And then for others of you, you're listening and you just want to prevent from even having your relationship and marriage get to that place.
Oh, yeah.
And so this episode is really going to serve you in any of those places because we need to talk about these hard things. We need to address these deeper reasons for why marriages would lose fulfillment or fail, and not just kind of be like, but I only want to talk about the rainbows and butterflies. No, we need to have these deeper conversations.
And we're going to do this a little bit differently today. So normally Jocelyn and I will plan and get on the same page about the content that we're going to cover. And in this case, we just came off of our morning meditations. We had cacao. We contemplated on this topic, and we both came up with our own lists. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what's on your list.
It's going to be like a surprise.
You don't know what's on my list.
We'll see how much on this. There might be several overlapping, or who knows, maybe we'll surprise each other.
We'll probably have some overlapping, I would guess. And it's really coming from, we've done a lot of assessments with couples, relationship assessments. We also had a workshop recently, and we do all this coaching. So there is a number of things bringing themselves to the surface that are very common for a lot of couples. Mm-hmm. And in those assessments, we've been doing much lower levels of satisfaction than other seasons that we've done these in. So we both contemplated on what we feel like are not necessarily like a top 10 list. Mine is kind of chronological. That's how my brain works. We'll see how yours come out. But what we'll do is we'll just share back and forth, and we'll see where we have overlaps and see where we thought of something new.
Absolutely. Well, Aaron, I am so curious to hear your first one.
Okay.
Let's hear it.
Well, here we go. So for those of you listening again, mine was kind of chronological, like that build up. Mm-hmm. So the first thing I thought of, from more of a higher level, it's that an overemphasis on the tasks and activities that fill the calendar or just one's day. And when that happens, what I've been seeing is that the other person or one of the partners feels that the home life is completely dictated to them and out of their control.
That is so true. And we hear this a lot from couples and each of the individuals. It takes some time for them to feel like they can say it because they almost feel like, but this is the life I dreamed of. I wanted kids and I wanted this home. And it can feel hard for people to say, gosh, even though I'm getting kind of everything I want, I feel as though, I'm not in control of my schedule. Mm-hmm. I feel as though I'm constantly running around. I feel like it's always about the kids or it's about something you're asking me to do around the house.
Well, I want to make this specific because there's two people obviously in this. And there's typically, from my perspective, one is managing all the tasks and activities and putting it on the calendar, and a lack of fulfillment that I'm specifically talking about is for the other person that feels they're constantly told where to be. Here's your schedule. Basically, here's your life.
Yeah, well, and for people, the reason that this impacts the marriage fulfillment, right, is because it almost can feel to the individual, or maybe even you both feel this way, is like, this isn't what I dream of in a way. It's almost like this disillusioned feeling of, am I supposed to feel like ecstatic about my life right now when I feel like literally from the time I wake up to the time I go to bed, it's about everyone else but me. And there's not this sense of like, I'm actually designing my life. And, fulfillment is really not just from the doing. It can't be that you're just getting things done. That's not what we're going to focus on at the end of our life.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's a little bit on a different thread, actually. I actually had that as a different one. But from this perspective, I want to give the action to do.
Okay.
And so again, this is from my perspective, the one partner that feels that their life is dictated to them. And it's such a simple thing. I think the simple things are the best. you have to communicate that you feel this way. Otherwise, the other partner is just going to put more in there and think that all this is working for you because you get to the places you need to go. So simple thing, if you're the partner that's feeling this way, you have to bring up the conversation about, hey, I love all that you do to keep us all on task and to get things done. And how I'm feeling right now is just that I don't have a say. So don't make this about them. Just share again your experience. That's my action item for this one.
Yeah, love that. And I'll share my next one, which is kind of like a slight shift of that one.
Okay.
So similar thread, which is that it's two people trying to create happiness in the marriage when they're not happy as individuals. And so that means that maybe one or both of you is not prioritizing doing things that make you happy. You're not a happy individual. So how could you experience this profound fulfillment in your marriage? It's almost impossible. And so what's important is that you two, regardless of what responsibilities you have, parenting, careers, maybe there are other family members that you really have to support and help. You must do whatever it takes for you to get some time for yourself and your mental health, your emotional health, and your physical health. If you're not confident in your body, that's going to impact the way you show up in the relationship. You might be hypersensitive. You might feel self-conscious. If you aren't mentally well, like your mindset isn't on point, you feel overwhelmed, stressed, how are you going to show up at the dinner table? Are you going to be like this happy, fulfilled partner that's creating joy in the relationship? Probably not. And so it's got to be a priority that you are happy individuals taking care of yourselves.
Yes, really great. Any action item or is that unclear?
Well, I mean, think about which word I said that resonates. Is it the mental health, emotional health, physical health that you need to prioritize right now? Maybe for you, you heard, okay, I feel like I need to take care of my body. Okay, great. Do you need to start eating better and exercising so that you show up more confident in the relationship? Or maybe when I said emotionally, that stuck out to you. So maybe you need to either work with someone, a coach or a therapist, to work on your emotional regulation, or you need to gain tools to really make yourself happy or release sadness or release anger. So whichever word I said that resonates, do something for yourself. Block it weekly, minimum. Again, I don't care how many kids you have. I don't care what you have to do. If you have to ask a friend to help you once a week, we need to ask for help sometimes. And so that's my action item for you.
Okay, great. Love that one. My second on my list is, I really saw this as coming as an effect of my first one of having an overemphasis on the tasks and activities being dictated to you. So then what tends to happen, I feel, and not just from this, but then the small daily emphasis on the daily interactions between you and your partner turn into complaints, criticisms. You have sharp either tones of voice or like kind of sharp, quick reactions back to each other, or in this case to your partner. And then there are no or very little gestures that express the love, the affection, as well as, that you see and you prioritize your partner.
Like
So
more
it's the
withdrawals than deposits.
Yeah, I was saying in a different way that those that don't know that principle. But yeah, basically, if you know love deposits, that's the main summary. But being more specific, your daily interactions, you could say, are more negative or more non-existent, which also deplete this feeling of a love account, rather than positive deposits that have your partner feel loved, feel that you're on the same team, feel prioritized, seen. So it's these small little interactions. Most people think it's these big things that get you back to this connection, but it's not.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing in that is just your attention gets so taken away from showing appreciation, gratitude, love, and becomes about, gosh, did you really have to put the dishes away that way? Or really, like, you forgot to bring this home? Or like pointing out all the things they're not doing or that you wish they'd change. All those micro criticisms.
Yeah, I mean, we can go deeper on this one, but it's also putting your attention other places on your phone or TV. So, we said in the workshop, it's with your attention you show love. So if your attention is other places, then the amount of love your partner feels is going to be lower.
Mm-hmm.
So these interactions that do not serve or move forward emotional connection, the feeling of love and connection.
I think then, so an action item, correct me if I'm wrong, would be, right? How, like, do you have a recommended number of like gratitudes or appreciations every day?
Well, it's not just gratitudes and appreciation, but like how you show appreciation. And so it could be, I don't know, 5.
Okay.
I'll say 5
minimum
gestures towards your partner that are new from what you normally do. Because, we bring this up with a lot of couples and they say, oh, well, I do this and I do that. Well, there's a deeper principle here of, well, the routine things don't really go noticed by your partner, as well as the energy you do something routine in is not quite the same.
Yeah.
So we want to bring new energy and new attention to 5 new things a day, which will also bring your attention to the places that you were withdrawing, if for those that know the principle. But you'll start to notice, oh man, I do complain. I do criticize more often. I'm really not showing them that much attention day to day. So I think the 5 new ones per day you'll start to notice the opposite.
So interestingly, my next one is almost like the root cause of yours.
Oh, okay.
At least one of the potential root causes. So one of the other reasons that marriages lose fulfillment or fail is all the things unsaid. The withheld communications is what we would say. So in a relationship, what we see with so many couples is there becomes this point where, to your first one, it becomes so focused on the to-dos, the tasks, and you're just functioning that there's this loss of vulnerability and saying the things that need to be said sometimes that are hard to hear. We did a post on this last week about, when your partner says things that are hard to hear, which sometimes sounds like, hey, I haven't been as fulfilled right now, or hey, I'm feeling overwhelmed, or hey, I'm feeling this. And that loss of vulnerability impacts your fulfillment. Why is that? Well, because to feel truly connected at a deep, intimate, emotional level requires vulnerability. To open your emotions to each other, to share, even if it has to do with each other or other things in life. And we see so many couples just kind of like, oh, okay, what's your conversation at the dinner table? Oh, how was your day? Fine. That's as deep as you're going to go? That's all you're going to share when really you were impacted by something. It triggered emotion for you. You need to open up to someone, but instead you're going to hold it back. And so in your marriage, you want to look out for the things that are unsaid. I'll give you one more example from a couple we recently have been working with, and they have a lot they haven't said to each other in a while. And it's not about the blaming each other, pointing the finger. It's more so about, hey, I have this whole thing that's coming up for me about not feeling worthy. Or, hey, I have this whole thing coming up for me around not being good enough. And so it's usually the deeper, more vulnerable things that couples need to open up about.
And I can see why someone listening to this would, or other people would have not had that conversation, because you may feel that you don't have the skill to do it in such a way that your partner can receive it. So find another podcast episode that will help you have these types of conversations. You have the Argument Hangover book that you can get. You can't have the excuse of, well, I don't know how to bring it up. Well, they might respond in a certain way that'll cause tension or cause conflict. That cannot be your excuse for holding in and withholding this communication, avoiding the emotions. And actually, this one that you had was my number 5. So I'll just add one small piece, because when you do this deteriorates you internally.
Wow, that's deep.
It deteriorates the satisfaction, the level of openness that is supposed to be in a relationship. And I think that's one of the main things that really leads to either a failure in the marriage or this feeling of not being fulfilled. Because if you can't share all that's going on within you and have it feel accepted, then that deteriorates that feeling of fulfillment.
That deteriorates word is so strong, but so true. And another way I'd say it too is like you become so full of all these withheld communications that it like at any moment you could burst.
Yeah.
And, or like, I did this post a while back about like the clutter between you two that blocks intimacy. And it creates this distance between you two because there's really all these things you haven't said that are in the way. How do you get really close to someone when there's all these things that haven't been addressed and they're in your space and you're like around them and they're kind of, subconscious there for you?
We did a post, right? Wink, wink.
Oh, I know. Well, that one I did.
We did. It says
We
meet
did.
the Freemans.
You're right.
I'm just kidding. But anyway, so let's move to my next point then, because I love the one that you brought up there.
Well, we didn't quite give them an action item for that one. So
okay.
For those things unsaid and the withheld communications, you want to set up some kind of frequency that you are having quality time to discuss your relationship. So one thing that couples we work with who are parents come up against is by the time they come home from work, do the dinner, do the baths, put them to bed, all that, they are like, okay, but now it's downtime. That's when we're supposed to be relaxing. And okay, so that's a challenge. And then the weekends you end up filling with gatherings and parties and all those things. So you need to block that time for your relationship. Maybe it is getting a sitter on a Saturday afternoon so that you can go to coffee and to lunch and to discuss your relationship. Or maybe instead of every night your downtime is watching TV after you put the kids to bed, instead you say, hey, let's go spend some quality time in our bedroom. And you open your hearts to each other and you discuss it. You need to put something in place so that you can have that sacred special time to open up and you don't blindside each other at some surprise time.
Yeah. We have a client that has a lunch meeting. And even though he is at work in this case, and she's working from home as well as watching the kid, that at lunch, they have a call. Actually, I'm not sure if it's just voice or if they do like a Zoom so they can see each other's face. But either way, once a week, they have a lunch meeting to do this. So that was also one example.
Yeah. Okay, good. So do you want to share your next one?
Yes. The one I saw next, and maybe this isn't chronological, but essentially there's no vision. And by vision, we do mean a couple's vision. Obviously, you've heard us talk about having a couple's vision statement. And I won't go more into the details of the benefits of a vision, but here is what happens when you don't have a vision. You're just focused on the management. So without a vision, without seeing the bigger picture, what your relationship is here to represent, which gives a certain level of aspiration and inspiration for all the things you are doing. You see it in the context of, oh, we're doing all this stuff because here's our vision. And also it allows you to see the challenges differently that come up in your relationship. It's not that, oh, this shouldn't have happened or this is keeping us from something. But if you don't have a vision, like, you haven't defined what is keeping you from even. So the challenges can be seen as, oh, these are things in our life to move us more towards a vision. And so again, when you just focus more on management, there's no joy either. Like at one point you just feel this mundane routine energy. You become kind of passive. And again, that could be an effect of the first one I said, that you feel all of your life and your time is dictated to you. And if that's the case, it's just all tasks and management. And then where's the joy in that?
Yeah. And so we normally would take couples through the vision statement process in our workshop because it is about an hour-long process. So if that's not something you can attend, which we plan on doing another in-person one in Arizona coming up, we haven't announced the date because that's a process that we do, then at least just start to write out, like, what is our vision? What are our dreams as a couple? What do we want these next, 1 year, 3 years to be about? What is something we can aspire for together? I want to take mine a little bit of a different direction than we've gone, which is looking at how each of your individual pasts, your upbringings, your formative relationships, how those didn't get resolved for you, the emotional impact of those, and now you're kind of unconsciously recreating and reliving those. Right? So if there was, something big in your childhood with your mom, with your dad, with someone that was really important to you, and you didn't actually address that emotion and that impact on you, you can manifest that same experience with your romantic partner.
Oh, yeah.
In some way, shape, or form.
You most likely will.
Oh, and romantic relationships. You guys, if you've listened to our episodes for a long time, have heard how I kept reliving the same experience in my romantic relationships over and over again. And the source of it was something from my childhood that I didn't actually look at and resolve. And so people try to have this amazing marriage without ever looking at how their upbringing could be influencing them and impacting them in negative ways. And it is so important because when you don't resolve the past, you drag it into your present. That's just the way it works as humans. Now, I didn't know that. It wasn't until I was introduced to that through self-development. But you too want to make sure you look at, okay, if this is happening in our relationship, maybe this is stemming from something for each of us or one of us from our past. Let's go look at that. Because when you look at it, reflect on it, resolve it for yourself, especially the emotion around it, because a lot of times we might have processed the event mentally, but we didn't emotionally, then it's going to give you a new perspective in your relationship. Is there anything you want to add to that one?
No, that was actually basically my number 6 on my list as well. And I was thinking of the action item. And I think, to be frank, if you will, that unless you've spent a lot of years reflecting and specifically on like your past, imagining yourself as a kid, like specifically looking at this, some people call this like inner child work. Well, you're probably not going to be able to do this on your own. You don't want to be honest about it. And your partner probably isn't going to really be able to help you. So the action item is, start to listen to something maybe around inner child or repairing emotional wounds. And then maybe if you could find someone in your life that you could have a conversation with and they could help you specifically track that back. Yeah. There's a whole other process from a doctor, I can't remember his name at the moment, but it's called tracking. And he talks about the thought forms in our mind, what he calls holodynes, but essentially is a way to track those back, and you can basically mature them. You can accept and forgive them emotionally and release it, and you can actually then transform that thought image into something that actually benefits you. He calls it maturing a holodyne, and through a process of tracking. So essentially, it's deep work. So I'm glad you brought that up. It's very deep. Sorry, we maybe gave you one that you can't just pause this podcast and do on your own.
Let me figure out how my whole childhood is impacting my marriage.
Yeah, and I think just as an example, right, this past weekend with our friends Michael and Mackenzie in Montana, we weren't necessarily planning on it, but we went into an intentional morning cacao ceremony, and through the conversations that came up, I noticed one for myself, right, where this seemed to be something that was literally locked in my DNA. And I haven't shared this, I don't think, very publicly, but when I was born, I was a preemie. And so I was about 4 weeks early. I weighed under 5 pounds. I was 4-point-something pounds. I had whooping cough. So I came out blue and I wasn't breathing. So I went into is it NICU or ICU?
Yeah, NICU.
Yeah, NICU right away. And I don't know what happened in that, but I was separated from my parents for a certain amount of time, so no physical touch for maybe the first couple of days of my life. I was in an incubator thing. I'm sure people like nurses were poking and prodding me. And so essentially what I got to was I'd always felt this thing around physical touch that I feel very uncomfortable when people go to touch me, and not just like random people, but even with you, I can see how this impacts our current life, as it's always been this way for me, but even a romantic partner, when you like hug me without it being a sort of invitation, an internal clock within inside of me starts to count down, right? Like I feel uncomfortable. And, some people might think, oh, it's maybe not that big of a deal. But as we look more and more specifically at what blocks are there at all, what blocks do I have around more love, then this was an area, but I never really related it to those first couple of days of my life being probably needles in me, people touching and poking me. And so it didn't seem like I had anything to do with this, which I guess I didn't, but in my DNA and in my subconscious, which if you go Joe Dispenza route, like your body actually is your subconscious mind, which when I think about this makes a lot more sense, is that I don't need anybody. And I really saw that specifically when I was thinking about my dad. And there was a certain time in my life where I kind of made up in my mind that, like, I don't need any more help. And so between that and the touch, I think that's a place I'm still looking for myself. But clearly an impact there, an emotional wound from days old. I didn't choose that, but that happened to me. And these are things I still need to go down and dive into because they're blocks.
Yeah.
And so I would imagine for you listening, there's something down in there. So if you're really interested in how to bring more fulfillment, if you're really interested in like freeing yourself up open to love, this is a deep area.
It really is. And it was powerful when you shared that example for you. And for those of you listening, it may be something when you were a little bit older and it was a relationship with one of your parents, or maybe it was your first romantic partner. So the action item, as you started to point to, right, is it's likely going to take something else asking you the questions, or someone else. So a confidant or someone you hire, or listening to experts and leaders help you work through healing your past. So going to the one, which is almost like a ripple effect of the one we just addressed, a deeper reason that marriages lose fulfillment or fail is a lack of emotional intelligence, which often comes from your upbringing, right? And also just our society, that we weren't kind of raised in schools where it's like, okay, let's also talk about how our feelings impact us and where feelings come from and what do you do when you're feeling different things. No, what we're told is stop acting out, be tough, be a good girl, be a strong boy, right? Like we aren't given the space to learn about our emotions and then also learn techniques for regulating our emotions. So then we grow up and then we're adults and we're supposed to be in these romantic relationships, which happen to be very triggering sometimes. Triggers are a part of just about every single marriage that we know. I can't even think of one where they don't have any triggers come up in their relationship.
Some might think that they don't have them, but then they're suppressing them. So it goes back to the other point you made, like withholding and withdrawing and suppressing, essentially.
Exactly. And so because being triggered or emotions coming up, I mean, life presents different opportunities to bring up your emotions that aren't always the positive ones. And, your partner might say or do something that brings up anger for you, brings up sadness for you, which could be from your past, right? Like, so they're all linked. And you two must have the ability to recognize what you're feeling and how to process it, like what to do with that emotion, and then how to communicate it with each other. But what we see so often is people unconscious of what they're actually feeling. Like we'll even ask one of the partners, what are you feeling? I don't even know. I don't know what to label it, right? Because they were never shown how to label what their emotion is. So then that, not only are they not identifying and labeling what they're feeling, then what they do is go distract themselves. They work longer, they look at their phones, they watch TV, and then it impacts the relationship because their partner is like, hey, I can kind of sense something's going on for you, and they don't open up about it. Or here, so it can go both ways. One, they don't open up about it, so it creates distance. Or two, they somehow lash out. And really, it's coming from something else. What we see a lot is when couples are coming out of an experience where one person kind of like lashed out in a big way, it's not even that incident that's usually the thing. It's that was the trigger to like kind of trigger the emotion that came from something way back, like a week ago or a month ago. But they suppress that emotion. And here's the thing with emotion, it doesn't just go away. It's going to be there ready to pop up at some time if you don't have a way to move that emotion. Mm-hmm. So this emotional intelligence is really important.
Yeah, one thing I want to add to this, and then we can move to the next point. Both of those things that you mentioned also have to do with unmet expectations. That's where all disappointments come from. So not just unmet expectations, but when your expectations are unexpressed. So to your point, without this clarity on what I am feeling, having the language around it, let alone what expectation did I have here that I probably didn't express, I think that's just a small part of what you're also saying.
Absolutely. And before moving on, I think for this action item, right, learning emotional intelligence, how to label them, but also how to communicate them to your partner. I received a message this morning that the person was saying, I don't know how to stop getting so defensive and reacting to my partner, right? So they're recognizing this lack of emotional regulation and they're taking it out on their partner and it's creating conflicts and arguments. And so that is something we can really help with. And we actually want to provide an opportunity for only 3 couples, right? So you're going to want to listen to this because it's going to be a race for this. Yep. But for 3 couples, we've only offered this once, I believe, on the podcast.
We ended up doing it twice because the 5, I think it was, went so fast.
They went so fast. Okay, so we offered it twice. They went very, very fast. And then we offered it at the workshop and just literally so many couples took advantage.
10.
Yeah, we realized.
Well, I want to say this, it really is 3.
Yes.
Because, so we have 10 from the workshop and we have another 9 from the web class. So we have, what did I just add up? 19. Yeah.
To do,
so we honestly do not have that much, but you felt so called to offer this. So honestly, it is only 3.
So what it is,
we can't do more than that.
Doing this relationship assessment that we take couples through. It's a 25-page report after you each go through this assessment and these questions. Then we get on a Zoom call and walk you through your results. And we are masters at this assessment. So we are able to draw correlations between, hey, this is happening in your relationship because, okay, look at this over here. And hey, here's something you each need to work on so that you can stop this pattern and break through this. And we give you tools to do that. And so to take advantage of one of these 3 spots, you can either text or email us. So the text is 602-321-5652. And then the email is connect@newpowercouples.com. And those will also be in the show notes. But it's a race. Like Erin said, we literally only have 3 spots available. And we can't wait to see who's going to take advantage of that.
So let me do the last one on my list here. And it kind of is a summary in a sense that it's less emotional intimacy, which is coming from a lot of the things that you already mentioned and we both mentioned here. So this last one is less emotional intimacy that leads to your physical sex life not being fulfilling, or even that after you have sex. So it's not about frequency. I really want to get that. So I also want to say people think that maybe this should have been like one of the top reasons, right? It's like here we have this topic on what leads to less fulfillment or failure in a marriage, and it's sex. Well, there's literally so many other things
that lead to that
before you get there. Mm-hmm. And it's really not about frequency either. It's about how satisfying is your physical sex life. And when you think about all the other things that we talked about, the emotional wounds, feeling that your time has been dictated to you, suppressing emotion, avoiding, all the other things that we mentioned, I mean, there's no passion, desire there for your partner. Mm-hmm. And so you're not going to be initiating as much. Yes, you won't be having as much sex, But you just have to see that this is just kind of like an effect. All these other things are really the causes. But I will say, I had to add it in here, right? So that people were like, oh, well, they missed one. It was about sex. Well, there's so many deeper things around that, because we talked to couples that are coaching with us and clearly have a lot of these other things that we've talked about, because even when they have sex, they're not satisfied. They don't feel fulfilled. They actually don't feel more connected. So sex has just become an activity that you either get done for your partner, or you just kind of do because you assume it's supposed to happen, or maybe a very brief physical pleasure, but it doesn't last long because now you're right back into all these other patterns that we just talked about.
Absolutely. And I think the action item to that one is to address all the other ones that we mentioned, right? Because that's what then leads to that lack of sex and passion. I have one more I wanted to go into.
Yeah.
Okay. So one other deeper reason marriages lose fulfillment or fail is either mismatched or unrealistic beliefs about marriage and relationships.
Oh, interesting.
And that includes even mismatched or unrealistic beliefs about love. So some examples of these beliefs, because here's the thing about beliefs. For us as humans, beliefs live like the truth. And beliefs come from a lot of your, again, formative experiences. And a lot of beliefs that we hear from couples, and again, they're not aware of it. We just can catch it in their language. Like, oh, it's interesting you said that. You must believe something like this. And to change your action, you have to change your belief. So some belief examples would be like, relationships shouldn't be hard. And so then when they're challenged, like conflict coming up or their partner challenging them, then what do? They want to retreat and they think it shouldn't be like this.
Or to link to the other episode that I did specifically, what shouldn't be happening, you suffer. So when that happens, now you're suffering in a relationship and you think, I shouldn't be suffering.
Yes.
This is too hard.
Exactly. Or it could be beliefs about love. If they love me, they should just know what I need. Right? That's one that we hear, and it's so like ingrained.
Meaning I shouldn't have to communicate it?
Yeah, I shouldn't have to express what I need, or they should just know it. And so it can be even about love, or for some people, they have these beliefs about love that is much more about it being 50-50. And when you don't see your partner giving that 50%, you withdraw some of yours.
Yeah, it's a funny one because it's totally subjective, the 50%. You're probably down there doing about 15%, thinking that you're doing 50 with your subjective view of them doing 50 or not. Well, you're both at that point probably doing about 10, so you got about 20%.
Well,
you're really going.
One more even kind of practical belief that can impact relationships when it's mismatched. One partner, because of maybe how their parents operated, sees, like, let's say that it's a male-female relationship. Oh, the females should just do this stuff and the males should do this stuff. And for the other partner, they're like, that's not the kind of marriage I want. I want to be co-leaders and I want us to share responsibility. And I don't want you to expect me to do these old-fashioned things for females or vice versa, like kind of expecting certain things of men. And so there can be both like the practical kind of day-to-day beliefs you have about if you're a wife, you should do this. And if you're a husband, you should do this. But also then there's the beliefs like at a higher level about love and marriage. And so I think the action item here is to really reflect for yourself on what is it that I believe about marriage, love, relationships, and ask yourself, how is this belief impacting our relationship? And for some of them, it may be a positive impact, right? Because you might have a belief that actually is like, wow, that's actually really empowering. It has me show up a certain way. But there will be some beliefs that are connected to patterns that you have that are not constructive, right? And that it shows up in the way you handle conflict or the way you communicate. And so I really encourage you, because belief and action are always connected. So any others that you had on your list that you want to close out with? We covered a lot here.
Yeah, I have one, but it could be a whole podcast by itself.
Then let's save that one for a podcast. Now, we covered quite a few on your list and our list. And the whole goal of this episode is not for you to feel doom and gloom. This is about prevention. This is about how you can look out for these. And some of them might be actually showing up in your marriage and relationship now, and you need to do some work on them. But that's what it takes. And if you take anything from our whole podcast, whenever you listen to us, is that relationships, we believe, and we encourage you to take on this belief, are better when you're always working on them. There is no arrival. There's no place where you get to and you're like, everything's great. It's got to take ongoing work on these things. So we really encourage you to maybe even listen to this.
Well, I guess to that point, I guess I would also say you may get to a place where everything is great, but it is that attitude, though, like you're saying, if this is where you were meant to get to, you'll immediately start a progression backwards. Mm-hmm. So I just want to say that because, things could be great, and you want to keep focused on all these things that we talked about to keep it alive. Because as you mentioned, if it's great and this is where we were supposed to get to, and then you stop bringing attention and intention, that's really going to be what starts a kind of the reverse process.
Great way of saying it. And it takes you maintaining it ongoingly. And so we encourage you to maybe even re-listen to this episode, at least bring your attention to one or two of these, because I'm sure that a couple of them struck a chord for you. And again, we can't wait to see the 3 couples who take advantage of taking the relationship assessment and doing the call with us to go over your results. Again, to take advantage of that right now before they're gone, like don't wait. Then you want to either text or email. And the text again is 602-321-5652 or email connect@newpowercouples.com. Oh, and we didn't even mention the investment for that. It's $147 and it's super easy. We send you the invoice, send you the assessment. It takes like 2 seconds to get it going. And we can't wait to see who takes advantage of that. And with that, everyone, we are here for you. Keep connecting as a couple, keep working on your relationship, and we'll talk to you on the next episode.